If Lucy had known what awaited her below ground, she never would have taken the detour through the deserted subway station. The city above was bustling with life, but down here, it was an entirely different world. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the grime-covered walls, and the air hung thick with the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic like old pennies. Lucy clutched her handbag tighter as she descended the cracked stairs, her high heels echoing through the empty corridors. She had missed the last regular train and thought cutting through the old station would save her time. She hadn't counted on the unsettling atmosphere gnawing at her nerves. As she reached the platform, she noticed a solitary magazine lying open on a bench. The pages fluttered slightly in the draft that whispered through the tunnels. The cover featured a beaming model, her smile a stark contrast to the gloom that enveloped the station. Ignoring the magazine, Lucy glanced up at the electronic board. The next train wasn't due for another 20 minutes. She sighed, feeling a shiver creep down her spine. It was just the cold, she told herself, just the cold and the unsettling silence. She walked to the edge of the platform and peered into the tunnels. The darkness seemed to stretch on forever, an abyss that swallowed the light. She took a step back, her heart pounding a little faster. Time seemed to crawl in this underground purgatory, each minute feeling like an hour. Something clattered behind her, the sound sharp and sudden in the quiet. Lucy spun around, her eyes wide. The magazine had fallen to the floor, pages splayed out like a fan. She approached it cautiously, half expecting it to move again, but it lay still, just a discarded piece of print. She picked it up, intending to throw it back onto the bench, but paused when she saw the article it was open to. A story about a series of disappearances in the city, all linked to the subway system. Her eyes skimmed the text, a sense of unease growing in the pit of her stomach. The victims were all young women, last seen entering subway stations late at night. Lucy's reflection stared back at her from a nearby glass panel, her beautiful features now twisted in apprehension. She felt a sudden urge to leave, to climb back up those stairs and never return. As she turned to go, she heard it, a low, almost imperceptible whisper. It came from the tunnel, a susurrus that sent chills racing down her spine. It sounded like someone calling her name. She shook her head, convinced it was just her imagination. But the whisper came again, more insistent this time. Against her better judgment, she stepped closer to the edge and peered into the darkness. Lucy. The voice was unmistakable now, a breathy murmur that seemed to come from the very walls around her. Panic surged through her veins, and she took a step back, her heel catching on the edge of the platform. She stumbled, arms flailing, but managed to regain her balance. Her heart was hammering so hard she could hardly hear anything else. She looked around frantically, searching for any sign of another person. But the station was deserted, the flickering lights casting long, ominous shadows. The magazine lay forgotten on the floor, the faces of the missing women staring up at her accusingly. Just then, the lights went out completely, plunging the station into darkness. Lucy gasped, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. She fumbled for her phone, the small screen casting a weak glow. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, surrounding her from all sides. "Lucy, come closer." She backed away, her hand shaking so badly she could barely hold on to her phone. She had to get out, had to find the stairs and escape this nightmare. But as she turned, she saw them, figures emerging from the tunnel, their forms barely visible in the dim light. They moved slowly, almost mechanically, their faces obscured by shadow. "Stay away," she screamed, her voice echoing through the empty station. But the figures kept advancing, their whispers growing louder, more urgent. In a blind panic, she turned and ran, her heels clacking loudly against the concrete. She could feel them behind her, could hear their shuffling steps and breathy whispers. The exit was so close, just a few more steps, and she would be free. But as she reached the stairs, something grabbed her ankle, yanking her off her feet. She hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the wind out of her. She looked back, her eyes wide with terror. The figures were upon her, their hands cold and clammy as they pulled her into the darkness. The last thing she saw before she was dragged into the tunnel was the magazine, now lying open on the floor. The faces of the missing women seemed to smile up at her, their eyes gleaming with a sinister light. and then everything went black. The next day, the city went on as usual, oblivious to the horrors lurking below. Another magazine appeared on the bench, another article about the disappearances. And somewhere, deep in the bowels of the subway system, the whispers continued, calling out to the next unsuspecting victim. If only Lucy had known. But now, it was too late, and the city would never know what really happened to the beautiful woman who vanished without a trace.